So here's a goal. We'll see if this sounds good to you. Imagine being able to play at your absolute best anytime, regardless of the situation. So if you're sick, if you're nervous, if you're cold, if you're tired, if you're hungry, anything goes. If you're distracted, something just happened in your life, anything goes on. You can sit down and you can play and play beautifully. What do you think? Sound good? That's what we're going to talk about today. It's a skill. It can be built. It's a muscle, and you can pump it. And so I hope that you enjoy this video on playing at your best when you're at your worst. If you'd like more tips on using your body well in this situation or any situation, I encourage you to download this book on classical guitar ergonomics. It's just how to use your body at the guitar so that you have the best chance of making the music that you would like to make. So find the link below to that and push it and download it, and you'll sound better in no time. All right, here we go. All right, so being at your best. It seems obvious that this would be a good thing, but let's just talk for just a second about the benefits of doing this. So being able to sit down and play at your best anytime builds confidence. It truly builds confidence so that you're not so worried. It doesn't cause so much anxiety if everything is not absolutely perfect. Oh no, my hands are cold. You don't have to freak out about that. You know, it's like, well, that's too bad, but at least I know I can do it, right? So it builds confidence, it builds resilience, and the ability to recover if anything should go wrong, which is tied in with confidence as well. It also helps you master your emotions while you're playing, because oftentimes that's one of the ways that we really get into that makes the situation hard, is our emotions. Fear, anxiety, worry, despair, anything that anger, shame, all of these things. It really helps to master all of these emotions while we're playing and put those aside. And it also gives you a more accurate sense of what breaks in your music so that you know when you are at your best. If something still goes wrong, well then that's of special note, and you can really work on those things when you get back to your practice. So it ups the bar and really lets you know where you're strong and where you're not as strong. So what are we talking about here? How do we actually do this? How do we practice so that we can be at our best in these situations? Well, here's the thing. To do that, you have to actually play in those situations. Luckily, they transfer over. You don't have to play in every situation in order to feel good about playing in that situation. But if you practice in uncomfortable situations, you will get used to practicing in uncomfortable situations, playing in uncomfortable situations. So one is as good as the next. Playing in a few different ones is great because then it's not so narrow, but you don't have to practice in all of them. And when we're talking about playing in these situations, it truly is just playing. And it could be a simple piece of music. It could be your big piece of music, whatever it is that you're working on. If you have a performance coming up, then it could be your hardest piece of music, or your opening, the very first one that you're going to play is a great one. Just whatever it is that you're doing. And so it's putting yourself in a situation where you are uncomfortable for any number of reasons, and we'll talk about some specifics of ways that you can practice this. Put yourself there and then play something. And that something could just be a passage. It could be something very delicate and spacious. It could be something very fast and technical. You could try a couple of different ones, anything like that. And so the main thing is that you're doing something challenging at a challenging time. What we're not talking about is a full-on practice where you are working to get things better, you're learning new notes and all of this. It's not a great time to practice. If you're distracted, if you're tired and everything, that's not the time to practice your guitar. Ideally, that's not what you're actually doing with your time here. Instead, we're talking about putting the cash on the barrelhead. We're talking about playing in these situations. And so it could only just be for a couple of minutes, a few seconds even, just anything to make your attention and your body do its thing in that moment. That's really all we're talking about. And so it's not a prolonged playing in these. So putting yourself in a heightened, drinking 50 cups of coffee and then I'm going to play for an hour. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about if your heart rate is up for any number of reasons, you just did a workout or something, and then sit down and play 8 bars or play 16 bars of music and focus and really make it musical and make it sound good. Play it as well as you possibly can. So that's what we're talking about here. So let's talk about some scenarios. How can you do this? So the first is that we'll talk about, we'll just go through a whole list of them. But at the end of a very long day, you're very tired, you're mentally exhausted. We had on one of our member calls, we had a fellow, Andy, asked, he's in the UK, the open mic happened in his evening time, and he liked to play at the open mics. They happen every month. And so he wanted to do this, but he was always tired at that time because that day that fell on happened to be a Saturday. He had a huge full day of stuff, all these responsibilities on Saturday, every Saturday. And so he asked, how can I play and how can I show up and do that well after all of this? And practice in this way is a great way to do it. And so one of the things like Mozart's father, Leopold, he asked his son, he kicked him out of bed in the middle of the night and had him play for his friends. His friends would come up after they've been at the bar, come in at 2:00 in the morning and, wake up little Wolfgang and say, Wolfie, play us something and entertain. And so he had to jump up in the middle of the night, completely groggy in his nightshirt and play it, right? Lang Lang, another pianist, his father would have him, he would walk into, while he was practicing or playing a piece, he would walk into the practice room and say, stop. And he would have him completely stop on the note. They'd set a timer for 5 minutes. And then he would have to, when that bell rang, at exactly the time it rang, he had to start with the exact note. He couldn't back up any. He couldn't back up to the beginning of the section or even beginning of the measure or the beat. He would have to start right on that note, right at tempo and start going right back in. So it was a challenge so that if anything like that ever happened, which it did, because it was, in China at the conservatories, it was a trick that the judges would play. And so that way he was always ready for it. So playing at the end of the day, when you're tired, just sit down and play a piece before bed. You might not want to. Now, if you do enjoy that, it could be that another time of day is really difficult for you, and that would be a better time, such as right after a big old lunch or right at first thing in the morning if you're not a morning person, just whatever's challenging for you. Another one is playing when you're hungry or you're tired. So when you're hungry, you're obviously not at your best. You could be, especially if you get hangry, if your blood sugar plummets and you're one of these like angry, hungry people. I was for a long time until I cut the sugar and don't eat as much sugar. But if you're hungry, that's a great time to practice playing a piece because it could be distracting. Your brain might not be there. You could have some brain fog, all of that. So if that's a dire situation for you, then just take it and frame it as, okay, just for this next 3 minutes, this is now training zone. And you just train, you just play. Another one is during or after a workout. So if you're working out at home and you're doing something, let's say that you have some weights, you do a rep, your heart rate is up, your hands have just been grabbing something stiff and so they're all locked up like this. Sit down immediately, pick up and just play a few measures of something. So play a few bars and do it at a time when your body is in shock from the workout that you've just done, be it heart rate and or muscles are tense and have been working. So pick up your guitar and play something. And it's just a great way to train resiliency in that moment. Another one is mental practice in situations, in extreme situations. A great one for performance practice is a cold shower. So get into a cold shower and then practice calmly visualizing a piece of music. And ideally you're releasing your body and your muscles. And so this really simulates a performance situation because your breath is short, your blood is pumping, your heart rate is up, you're in this state of shock because of this cold water coming down on you. And if you can just center yourself and mentally play through the piece, you can do it in the air if you'd like to, and calmly and smoothly play through this, what a great preparation for a performance. Another one is practicing and playing amid distraction. Josh Waitskin, who is a chess prodigy, and he's done a lot of other things since then, but he was a child chess prodigy. He would practice with blaring loud, heavy metal, like speed metal music, which he did not like, but he would practice that. He would practice with people blowing cigarette smoke in his face, which he also didn't like because he was very healthy. And so just the worst situations, people unnerving him so that he could go into these big international competitions and keep his nerve and keep his focus at a very high level. Well, at the world, he's a grandmaster, at the world international chess competition level. And so that was something that he actively trained in that way. So distract yourself, put on something else, put a metronome on at a speed that is not the speed of your piece. It's very annoying. And so, or some other piece of music or something, or the TV or something like that. The TV isn't as distracting as some other things because you might just tune out and watch the TV. But playing a different piece of music while practicing your piece, really distracting. And the last one I'll mention is when you're sick or when you're ill. And this is not, talk about not fun, right? And so I'm wary to advise this, but a couple of minutes, it won't kill you. If you're feeling absolutely terrible and you want to do this, this would take great, I've never actually done this myself because whenever I've not felt good, well, I just don't want to practice and I don't want to play. But as far as training this skill of being at your best when you're at your worst, it's a great time to do it. So if you're feeling horrible, your stomach is bad, and you're just not having fun, to be able to pick up your guitar and practice playing your piece and focusing and being as lovely with it as possible is really good training for any future situation that you may be in. So that's a little list of ways you can do it. You can be creative. This comes from Stephen Kotler's The Art of the Impossible. It's a great book. And he talked about doing speeches, rehearsing his speeches or talks when he was hiking up a mountain. So he'd hike up a mountain with a weight vest or something. And so he'd be huffing and puffing, and he would do his speech, his talk. He would practice it in that state going up. And so here he is having to navigate rocks and, footings and everything. His heart rate is up, his breathing is labored, and he's giving his talk and trying to put as much emotion and the timing and everything else into it as possible. And it really helped, so he says, with his speeches. And so it's a great way to practice that as well. We could do the exact same thing on a walk with your pieces, so that whenever you're getting attacked by wild dogs, you could be practicing your piece in your head, if you could pull that one off. All right, so that has been a few ways you can practice to be at your best. Doing this here and there, it is amazing how much it helps. I've done this a little bit over the years and have surprised myself in some performances when something happened and I was able to refocus much better than I would have expected after something went wrong. And there have been several, but distractions in the room. I say something that I didn't mean to, and so I'm feeling embarrassed or kind of shame-faced about it. Just to being able to just emotionally funky and weird. The room being very cold is a very common one. Marco Tamaya, the amazing guitarist, he suggests people practice cold anyway, because whenever you're performing, you oftentimes are cold. Your fingers are cold when you're performing, so just practice that way. Just practice with cold fingers. And so that too is another way. The examples abound. I'm not the first person who has talked about training in this way. It's been a long time element of training for athletes, performers, competitors of all subjects and all different disciplines. So we can bring that to here and then just really enjoy sticking it out there once in a while. Okay, have fun with that. It's not fun in the moment. It's not a fun thing to do, but it's a great way to train. And it also lets us reframe the day as, instead of everything's going wrong, we can think of it as a great day for training or a great time for training. All right, if you would like to clean up your playing, maybe use your body a little bit better while you're playing, then download this short guide to classical guitar ergonomics. It'll just get your body a little bit more aligned and centered and using your hands so that you avoid injury and play at your best. And with that, good day to you. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.